Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of Straight Talk Whiskey. I'm Nick, here with you as always. Thanks for joining us for episode number 118. So this week we've got for you a middle shelf, if you will, bourbon, Kentucky Straight Bourbon, and Knob Creek. So Knob Creek used to be bottled with an age statement of 9 years on it. But you'll notice, if you haven't returned to Knob Creek in a while, that there is no longer any more 9-year mark on the label. We've just got the 100 proof on there. So this I'm sort of reviewing as getting closer to some of the just daily drinkers slash slightly above entry level bourbons for people that they might just have lying around for a quick after dinner drink or something like that to sip on for a little bit. Because Knob Creek is one of the sort of small batch divisions of Jim Beam or Beam Suntory. So it's in this weird sort of places that it's positioned as somewhere along the line of Basil Hayden's or Booker's or something like that. But really, I don't know that it really fits into that category anymore. Because with Booker's, you get a lot, certainly in the proof, and definitely in terms of value for the dollar, that sort of thing. The price point certainly is a little bit different than Knob Creek. So I got this for roughly $32, $34.99 where I live. So that's before any of the obnoxious taxes or excessive taxes, in my opinion, in this state, but nonetheless. So I don't think that it's even in the same league anymore. So that's why I'm reviewing it as more of an entry-level bourbon. Not that $34 is something that people just dish out regularly, especially when there's things like, Jim Beam and Evan Williams and JD, all those sorts of things, which come in a little bit lower than that. Those prices have even risen a little bit. But anyway, I think it's more in tune with that category of whiskey than it is more of the small batch that it claims, and it still claims it on there, small batch, handcrafted, limited quantity. But I've never seen a bourbon producer or website, or especially, that has such little information on the actual whiskey. When you go and look up Knob Creek, their website, you have the standard, put in your birthday, make sure you're of legal age. But then it's got about 4 of their whiskeys, the rye, some maple finish or something like that. And then I think there's one other expression that I'm missing. But you click on it and it's literally less than, a sentence or two about what it is. And it's not overly descriptive as to what it is. There's no tasting notes. There's no process. There's no how it was crafted, where it was sourced, all that sort of thing. There's none of that. All there is sort of a scroll down list of people's reviews of it, which is interesting. So again, that is another thing that's sort of knocking it out of the small batch Kentucky Straight Bourbon category, at least for me, and certainly from Beam Suntory. So there's really nothing else other than Kentucky Straight Bourbon. We know it's aged a minimum of 2 years. But other than that, there's really nothing else other than talking a little bit about the actual Knob Creek deep in Kentucky. I'm not sure if that's in Claremont or not. Apparently there's not much of it left, but what there is of it left is rewarding. So I don't know. Interesting. It's one of those things where it's not the only claim that it's making that doesn't sit well with me is that it's small batch, because there's nothing to back it up other than saying it's produced in limited quantities, but there's no quantitative value associated with that to assume small batch. But other than that, they're not really making any other claims. They're not saying, that it's made of, white virgin oak from the heavens. It's not making any weird claims that is positioning it other than where it is, rather than the small batch. So it's just interesting. So anyway, with the color, you got a really deep autumn golden leaf color going on there, and they attribute that to the long maturation process, which I don't think is 9 years anymore. Otherwise, they'd keep it on the label, wouldn't you think? And with that 9 years, they could with the price a little bit. So something's going on there. In terms of the nose, it's a pretty standard nose on this, and the typical sort of bourbon-esque aromas that you might pick off of it. I'm getting the charred wood, campfire smoke, vanilla, a little bit of cinnamon, but definitely what comes through on the nose for me at least is sort of a newer, not aged as long oak, and almost an uncharred oak note, sort of like fresh cut wood on a table saw or something like that. Interesting, which may be tied into the age of it, which you would think that they could keep it at 9 years as a minimum if it were small batch, because it's a small batch Kentucky Straight Bourbon, so they wouldn't need to have a ridiculous quantity of it. So anyway, who knows the reasoning behind that? Let's go in for the taste. Now, apart from the traditional bourbon notes, the first thing that hits sort of the tip of the tongue and stays on the middle of the palate is this oak, freshly cut wood note that I was getting in the nose. It's just sort of a light smattering. It's almost like you got to the end of a popsicle stick and you take one last, lick trying to get the rest of the sugar juices off of there. And it's got sort of not a paint thinner, that's a little bit too aggressive, but the sense that it's just like this bland but slightly oak note to it. And then surrounding that is your traditional vanilla, cinnamon, nutmeg, those types of notes. But after that first sort of sip, you start to bring in some more things like peppery note. There's sort of a tobacco leaf taste going on there. Mint, fresh wintergreen, spearmint, almost pine needle. Got that pine forest type of sensibility to it. One of the things that's interesting about this is the mouthfeel, and that it's so unlike what I would think Knob Creek would be. I sense something that would be a little bit more heavier, a little more thick in its texture, but this one's really sort of watery in nature as opposed to, oily or, rich in texture like I was saying. This is just interesting. It's quick. It's the finish is nothing overly exaggerated. It's gone pretty instant after you taste it and swirl it around your mouth a little bit. So not an overly long finish. It's really interesting. And this is really unlike any review that I've done in the sense that I get just confusion for some reason off of this whiskey. It's like it used to be something. It used to have sort of these accolades. I think it won best whiskey of some sort in 2016. Maybe it was best rye or something, which isn't this, obviously. But just sort of these accolades and understanding and expectation, I guess, is the word that I'm trying to come up with about this whiskey when you drink it. And now it just feels like it's a slightly watered down questioning version of what it used to be. And it's not bad. It's not that it tastes overtly watered down and non-flavorful or anything like that. You can tell that it's still there. There's just something missing, and I'm not sure what it is. My first guess, if I had to make a guess, would be the age of the whiskey. I'm thinking that there would be a little bit more depth and flavor, a little bit more texture that I was talking about, a little bit more to the finish, certainly. But right now, it's just sort of leaving a lot of questions. And I'm not sure that out of the maybe 4 small batch expressions that Beam Suntory has in terms of the Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey, I'm not sure that this really even deserves to be in that category anymore, or if it is still in that category, is at sort of the very bottom and it's on its way out, because while it's good, I don't think it's on the same level, and I'm sure that reflects in the price point. I would have to look historically to see what that price has been, because I haven't been sort of a regular drinker of Knob Creek. That being said, purposes, I think it might be nice for somebody who likes to make cocktails. It may be good. If you don't want an overly powerful influence from the whiskey, this might be something that you're interested in. I'd be scared to see what this was like at any lower proof than 100 proof. So there you go. If you're just as confused as I am about this whiskey, let me know. Also, if you had as hard a time as I did at getting this cap off, it took me a good while. I almost needed a flathead screwdriver to get this thing out. And it's not an actual cork. It's one of those fake plasticky looking things, which I would just rather a screw top than trying to fake this weird looking plastic, whatever the hell it is. Just put a real cork in there, just give me a screw top. I don't want any in-betweens. So anyway, if you have some of the same thoughts that I do, or different thoughts, or if you still have a bottle of the actual 9-year Knob Creek, let me know. Let me know how that differs, how it's still the same, and your thoughts on that. So as always, if you're going to drink responsibly, and we'll see you next time.